This Illustrator tutorial explores using basic shape tools, fill and stroke colors, and creating vector files. We'll use the Artboard Tool, Rectangle Tool, Ellipse Tool, Line Segment Tool, the Pen Tool, talk about the Arrange commands, and layers. We'll start by placing this JPEG image of buildings into our Illustrator document, and then we'll use basic shapes to trace over that JPEG to create vectors. I can go to my outline view and see these are the vectors and the shapes that we created. We have different preset document templates that we can use. Up at the top you'll see mobile, web, print, film and video, and art and illustration. So these are commonly used file sizes for those applications. We're going to do a print document at a letter size preset. So if I went to the Print tab at the top, I can see the first preset option says letter. When I look over on the right sidebar, I can see that it's showing me the width and height in points. So I can change that unit of measurement from points to inches, and it should say 8.5 by 11 now. We want ours to be a landscape orientation. One artboard's fine. And we don't need to worry about bleed. So we can select the blue button to create. The first thing we should do is save our document. File, Save As. Navigate into your Adobe Design Suite folder, then create a new folder titled Lab 12-AI for Adobe Illustrator Basic Shapes. Open up that folder. And we'll save as format type. We'll keep it as an Adobe Illustrator.ai format. That will preserve everything so that we can always come back into the document and make revisions. I'll highlight the word Untitled -1, replace it with your last name, -12-AI basic shapes .ai. Click Save. This is where we can save to older versions of Illustrator. So right now you can see I'm on Illustrator 2020, but if I did want to be able to open it up in older versions, I can save it down to Legacy or below. But Illustrator 2020 is fine for now. I'll click OK. We have a blank document right now, and we're going to place that JPEG file that you just downloaded from Canvas. So I'm going to go up to File, Place. There is a file to download from Canvas. After you download that file, inside of your Downloads folder, you should be able to find a file that says ai-buildingshapes.jpg. Click Place. Okay, I'm going to go up to the upper left corner of my canvas, and I'm going to click, drag, and hold my mouse key down until the width of this image I'm placing is the same as the width of the canvas. And then I can release my mouse and I can see this black and white line drawing of some houses, and the object has this blue X across it. So that means that there's no vectors in this image that was placed here. So it hasn't been converted. We're going to create those vectors ourselves. Next, we're going to adjust the size of the artboard to fit this height of the image that we placed. So down, second tool from the bottom of your toolbar is the Artboard tool. When I select it, you'll see a bounding box around your entire artboard or your canvas. I'm going to go to the center anchor point at the bottom, and I'm going to click and drag until it fits the height of this image. So it's going to be somewhere around 11 inches wide by about 4.5 inches high. And if I go to any other tool, it will take me out of this artboard mode. I'm going to just go to the top tool, my selection tool, and I still have my image selected. I still see this blue X and the corner anchor points. If I did deselect it, I can just click on it again. I'm going to open up my layers panel now. I can see up in the upper right hand corner of the sidebar, I can see properties tab, and then the second one is layers. So we have one layer added right now. It's called layer 1. I can double click on the word layer 1 and we can type in original. So we know this is the original layer. And to prevent us from deleting it or moving it, maybe shifting it on accident, what we can do to this layer is lock it. So I can see on the left side of the layers panel, I have the eyeball to hide everything on that layer. And then there's this empty space to the right of that. If I click in there once, I have a little lock now on that layer. So if I tried to select this or do anything, it's blocking me from doing that. So we'll work a little more non-destructively on top of this by creating a new layer. So at the bottom of your layers panel, you'll see a white square with a plus sign in there, create new layer. Okay, so this will be the layer that we're going to start drawing our shapes on. So I'm just going to leave that there for right now and go back to my properties layer. And I can zoom in. We'll start on this first house on the left. I'm going to choose my rectangle tool, M, on your keyboard. So right now, we're looking at our document in what's called preview mode, but it gives us a chance to see the vectors of our document as well. In the view menu at the top, we can change from preview mode to outline mode. So if I went to outline mode right now, it's still just giving me that X placeholder because we haven't added any vectors yet. I'll go back up to the preview command at the top, and we'll draw our first vector rectangle. I'm going to click and hold and drag my mouse to create the first shape of this house. I'm going to line it up and then release my mouse key. I still have it selected. If I did that preview outline mode that I was just talking about, we can see that we actually just created a vector shape. So if I went up to the View menu and chose Outline, now you can see, if I click out of it even, I have this one single rectangle line. I'll go back up to View Preview now so we can see the image. To select it again, I can just go back up to my selection tool at the very top, or V, and click on that rectangle again to select it. Now I have my Properties panel open on the right sidebar, and it looks pretty similar to the rest of the picture here because I have right now a white fill applied and a black stroke. So it looks kind of just like the drawing. And it's also blocking the image behind it. Before we change the color of that, I want to take a look at the Layers panel first as well to see what it's automatically added to layer 2 here. So I can see this additional sub-layer that's been created underneath layer 2. Every time you create a new shape or a line or anchor point, it will automatically add a sub-layer to that current layer. I can go back to my Properties tab now so we can adjust the color. To change the inside color of my shape, I can click on where this white square is next to where it says Fill in the Properties panel. And you should see a library of swatches in here. You can always go to the color mixer option at the top of this color panel, and then you would get your CMYK sliders and also your rainbow spectrum. Stroke refers to the border or the outline of your shape. If you don't want color applied either to the fill or the stroke, you'll see inside of the swatches panel there should be in the upper left corner a white square with a red dash through it, and that means none. So I just took off the stroke of this rectangle. So now that I have color applied to the fill of this rectangle, just to show what the outline mode also does, is it shows you the vectors or the skeleton buildup of your illustration without colors. So this is the outline mode right now. Even though I applied that blue fill, I don't see it because this outline view is just showing me those vectors. I can go back into the preview mode. Now if I wanted to start drawing those other shapes that are underneath this rectangle, I have a couple options that I can apply through my Layers panel. Now I have layer 2, the arrow is still downward pointing, so I can see the sub-layers that are being created. I can use this eyeball on that new rectangle layer that we created to hide it. And now I can see these other objects underneath it. I'll go back to my rectangle tool, M, and I can make the door. So I'll click and drag it down. And it kept on the same color properties that I used on the last object. So I'm going to my Properties tab in the upper right corner. And for this I can change the fill to a different color. Click out. I'm still on my rectangle tool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more on this window here. And I can click and drag that window open. Now this one is giving me a white fill, and I think I actually want to put a stroke on this one. So I can click a black color for the stroke, and then you'll see the stroke size. Right now it's a 1-point stroke size. I can increase that stroke. And I can also apply none to the fill. And I can change that in a minute. Now, to get these lines of the window panel here, I'm going to use my line segment tool. To deselect this rectangle square that we already created, I can hold my Control key on a PC or my Command key on a Mac and just click outside of it to deselect. My line segment tool is underneath the rectangle tool. So if you click and hold the rectangle tool to reveal the hidden tools underneath it, you'll see the line segment tool. I'm going to hover over on the middle of the path that we already created. So even though I don't have that square selected anymore, when I hover over it with my crosshair cursor, it highlights so that I know I'm having good alignment. I'll be placing this new line right along the path of that square. So I'm going to click and drag across. This is my line segment tools. It's just going to create single lines. So you can see there's an anchor point on the left side. There's a line in the middle. That's our path. And it's joined by another additional anchor point on the right side. So I can do the same thing for the vertical. Click, drag downward. And you can use the line segment tool on any degree rotation. If I add my Shift key in, it keeps it perfectly vertical or perfectly horizontal. So I can release. And now I'll go back to my selection tool at the top. I can deselect everything. And I'm going to look at how my vectors look now in my outline mode. So there they all are. And I can select vectors through this outline mode. Sometimes you have things hidden. Remember, we apply colors. So it can be hard to pinpoint the exact vectors you're looking for. That's when this outline mode can really be useful. I'll go back up here to my view preview and zoom out a little bit. So we've got the window and the door added on top of this house. We're ready to bring back that hidden layer, that hidden rectangle. So if you look inside your layers panel right now, you'll see these additional sublayers that were created from the different objects we drew. And you should see one rectangle sublayer that's hidden. If I click that eyeball, it will make it visible again. So looking at my layers panel, I can see the blue rectangle is near the bottom of the stacking order of my layers panel. You can change the arrangement of your objects by dragging them through your layers panel. So if I drag that blue rectangle all the way to the top of that stack, you'll see that that's now in the foreground. I can undo that because I actually want it at the bottom of that stack, but that's how we change our stacking order. You can also click on an object right click using your mouse, and if I go down to arrange, you'll see you have the bring forward, bring to front, send backwards, send to back, and you can use those arrange commands to change the stacking order too. So bring to front or send to back will bring that object completely to the front or completely to the back of that layer stack. If you use bring forward or send backward, it sends it one object at a time. I want to add a fill color back to my window. So I'm going to click that square, go to my properties panel, and I can add a color back in. Let's save our document. And now we'll do a simple roof with our pen tool. So P will take you to your pen tool, and this is going to click down one anchor point each click. So at the top of my square there, I can do one click and release. And now I see that I have this line attached to my cursor. So I'm going to the top of the roof, one click and release. I can line it up with the upper right hand corner of the house, one click and release. And then to close this path, I'm going to hover over that first anchor point that I put down, and I see this little circle appear next to my pen tool cursor, and that indicates that I'm about to close this path. So I can click once and release, and now I see my roof added. I'm going to my stroke panel to take a look at some of those stroke options. First of all, I'm just going to change the color of it right now just so we can see it a little bit easier. And now to get to my stroke panel, I'm going to click on the word stroke in my Appearance tab. And then you'll see these additional stroke options. Okay. So I can see that the corner of the roof is jutting out from the edge of the building here. So that's partially because of the alignment of the stroke. Right now, my stroke is set to center. Let me change the color that I chose here so we could hopefully see it a little bit better. There we go. Let me zoom in a little bit more. I'll go back into my stroke panel. So when your stroke is aligned to the center, you'll see half of the stroke on the outside and half of it on the inside. I could try to change my stroke all the way to the inside, and now I can see that it's aligned perfectly with the edge of that house. Or I could do it all the way to the outside. It doesn't really matter which option you choose. And I can give it a stroke color, or I could also give it a fill color for both. So you're going to color your houses however you want. You're the designer. And I'll zoom out a little bit, use my space bar to scooch over, and I'll start creating the rest of the shapes. I can go back to my rectangle tool, and I'll start drawing the next house. So I can give it different colors. I can always take the stroke off. I can hide that layer. And what I might do, since I already created this window pane once, I could just copy it and duplicate it over on this additional house here. So I'm going up to my view outline mode. I'm on my selection tool, V, and I'm going to select this entire group of shapes here. So if I go just outside of that window pane, click and drag my mouse, you can see here's my selection box. So anything that's inside that area is going to get selected. So I release my mouse, it's got all those shapes. Oops, and I can see that it grabbed the main shape of the house too. I want to keep these objects selected but deselect this. I can do that by holding my shift key down and I'll click on that house. Maybe drag across it. There we go. So it deselected that house shape but it kept the rest of the window together. I'm going to group these objects. I can right click, go to group, and then I can also copy them. So I can go up to my edit menu, copy, and I want to go back to the preview mode, so I can go up to the view menu, preview, and I can paste that window in. So I'm going to go up to edit, paste, and there's a new window. Because it's grouped, I can click out of it and deselect it, and when I click back on it again, it's going to select the entire group. So I can move that up into the position, and I can see that the window I just pasted in is a bit bigger than the one that we're tracing. So using the lower right anchor point, I can start to drag and scale that sized window. Now I have two windows. I can hold down my Alt key on a PC or Option on a Mac, or you could just do a copy and paste. But I'm going to duplicate that window by clicking and dragging over to the right. Now I have those two windows there. You can see my outline mode. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit, and I can show that rectangle that I had hidden. So I click the eyeball. You're going to check your stacking arrangement order, make sure everything is visible. And now I can do the roof. So P for my pen tool. I'm going to line it up with the house edge. Click once in the middle. Line it up with the roof of the house. And then I want to see that circle when I go back to the original anchor point. Now if I go back to my Properties tab, maybe I'll take my stroke off. I can apply none, and I can give it a different color for the roof. If you ever want to see what your document looks like without, oops, I just laid down a new anchor point because I'm still on my pen tool. What I can do is undo it, and that takes it away. But if you ever wanted to see what your illustration looks like without the original, I can hide that original layer. I'm going up to my selection tool just to deselect everything and make sure it's all aligned, but that's how it looks without that layer showing underneath it. Save your document. Next, we'll start on the third house. Using my rectangle tool, I'll draw and drag open the shape of the house. To be able to see where the window goes underneath it, I'll go to my Layers panel, click the eyeball on that rectangle layer, and now I can go back to where my rectangle tool is, hold that down to reveal the tools underneath, and select the Ellipse tool. Drag and add your Shift key if you want a perfect circle, your space bar to reposition, and then you would release your mouse key first, and then your keyboard keys. I'll go back to my Properties panel and change the color of the fill, and go back to my Layers panel. Click on the eyeball for the rectangle to come back, and zoom in on the roof. One way that I could make this curved roof is with the Ellipse tool. So I'm going to use the top portion of my oval and I'll turn my arrangement command on, right click, arrange, and I'll tell this one to send to back. I can hide the original image for a second just so I can see how it looks a little better. Go back to my selection tool, deselect everything, and it looks like it's lined up pretty nicely. My outline view with all the shapes we've created so far. Click the eyeball on the original layer to make it visible again. I'll go back to my rectangle tool, draw open the shape of the house. I can hide that shape. I'll create the shape of the door and go to my Properties panel and change the color of the fill. Switch to my Ellipse tool. Hold the Shift key down to create that circle for the window. Back to the Layers panel. Click the eyeball on the house layer, and then we can use the Ellipse tool again to create this last rounded roof. Properties panel to change the fill. And then I can right click on that object, arrange, send to back. Zoom out. I'm switching to my selection tool, and I can click anywhere in the empty area to deselect everything. So now you can make the rest of the design unique to your own liking. I can add a road, or maybe it's some grass. I'm just using the rectangle tool here. And I could change that to a blue sky. I'm going back up to my selection tool so I can adjust the size to fit that artboard a little better. And then I can right click on it, arrange, send to back. Save your document. And You can turn in this single AI file. It does not need to be zipped or compressed. Now if you were to expand Layer 2 in your Layers panel, you'll see all the sublayers that were automatically created each time you drew a shape or an object. It has its own sublayer. So you can hide and show items by clicking on the eyeball and the corresponding layer. You can also lock items if you need to. If I go to my outline view, view outline, I can now see the vectors that were created. And go back to preview. So to recap, we explored using the Artboard tool, the Rectangle tool, the Ellipse tool, the Line Segment tool, Pen tool, the Arrange commands, and layers. Thank you for watching.